If you want a really fun minion build that actually focuses on the minion damage rather than you, the Necromancer's damage, I have the build for you. And as always, I will have the link to the build in the description, and on the left side of the screen, I'm actually going to have some gameplays to keep you a little more entertained as we go through this entire build. So onto the helmet, we're going to put Occult Dominion. It's going to increase your maximum skeletal warriors and mages by 2. Now what you're going to want to make sure that you roll on your helmet, your gloves, and your boots is +2 to Skeletal Mage Mastery. This is going to supercharge your Skeletal Mage damage and overall make clearing much smoother and much faster. On your chest, you're going to go for Blood Getters, so that makes it the Skeletal Priest is going to also empower you. So you're also going to get a damage boost, but every time that your damage goes up, your minions pull from your stats, which means that they're actually going to be getting a boost as well. So this is actually going to be a double benefit for your minions. On your gloves, you're going to go for Reanimation, so that your minions gain increased damage after they've been alive for at least 10 seconds, which is pretty much constant anyway, so they're going to constantly have a 40% multiplicative damage increase. And again, we want to go for +2 to Skeletal Mage Mastery on our gloves. On our pants, we're going to go for Hardened Bones to increase your and your minions' damage reduction. They removed a lot of the damage reduction from the game, so this is a very nice aspect to have to get some of that damage reduction back onto you. On your boots, I went with Metamorphosis. This is a personal preference. I don't like using the Golem specifically for the Unstoppable. This one allows me to have Unstoppable anytime I want it, and not having to use an additional skill slot for the Golem, because the Golem is underperforming and requires an entire Paragon tree just to make him actually viable. Okay. On the weapon, I went with Grasping Veins. We're going to be constantly casting Corpse Tendrils, so this is going to constantly give a +25 critical strike chance and a +50% critical strike damage bonus for all of your minions. So this is going to be a huge damage increase. On the amulet, we went with Yielding Commander. So whenever you have Army of the Dead up, your minions are going to do up to 150% increased damage and take 135% reduced damage. So basically, your minions become immortal while also becoming gods as far as killing. Went with the Ring of Mendel for the first ring, because this is going to make it so that your minions are going to basically just do a huge chunk of damage every 6th attack, and it's constantly happening since we're going to have 11 minions active at any time. Sacrilegious Soul is going to be our next ring, and this is specifically because auto-cast Raised Skeleton and auto-cast Corpse Tendrils. Now the part is, with Season 4 and with the changes on the PTR, it actually will summon the Skeletal Priest to buff your minions and also keep your minions from dying. In Season 1 through 3, that was not a thing. It just would only cast a Raised Skeleton every time you lost a skeleton and need to get one back. So now it's actually casting to get the Priest online, so we're constantly buffing our minions as well as healing them. And this is just doing it all for you, so it kind of puts it more on autopilot mode as far as it's concerned. I do still continuously cast Raised Skeleton because I do run Bone Mages, which we'll get to in a second, and it just helps to keep them alive that much better. And finally, we're going to go for Frenzied Dead on our offhand. It's going to give the minions a big chunk of attack speed. So definitely want to get this on your offhand. Also, if you can, for your tempering, try to get Skeletal Mage damage, and Skeletal Mage attacks cast twice on both your offhand and your main hand. I got raw damage on my main hand for this one, but that worked out perfectly fine because this weapon is absolutely disgusting, and I cannot believe I actually managed to get this rolled this perfectly. All right, so onto the Book of the Dead. We're going to go with Reapers number 2. So it has a chance to carve off a corpse. We don't use Hued Flesh in this build, so this just gives you more corpse generation. I'm going to go Skeletal Bone Mages number 1, so they have a chance to cast Bone Spear, and it actually does a crap ton of damage, even though we didn't go specifically a full Bone Spear centric build because I wanted my minions to do the damage. But I tested the Bone Spear on a bunch of the boss target dummies, and it does significantly more damage than going either Shadow or Cold Mages with the current build setup that I have. Then we're going to sacrifice the Iron Golem to get the increased critical strike damage. I was originally trying to go with Iron Golem number 2 to have the AoE grip. However, the AoE grip was about 2 centimeters from the Iron Golem, so it wasn't actually pulling any enemies in. So I had to get rid of him because his damage wasn't that good, and he wasn't really pulling any mobs in like I wanted him to. Also, the number 1 where it gets the 154% damage increase. Still, I mean, once in a while, he'll do a nice chunk of like a couple million damage. But in that same time, all of my other minions have decimated his amount of damage. So instead, I went with Corpse Tendrils because it's going to actually pull in the mobs that I want. All right, and on to the abilities. So here is the tree. We went decompose all the way up to acolyte decompose because this is another way to make them vulnerable. Works extremely well on bosses or for opening up an initial fight whenever the mobs are at a distance. You can decompose to actually get the corpse spawn because it spawns a corpse every second, as well as make all of them vulnerable, which you can then corpse tendril, continue the vulnerable, as well as stun them, pixel them all into one spot, and your mages just blow them up. We're going to have 1 point into Unliving Energy to get 3 points in Imperfectly Balanced, because it doesn't matter about you actually spending your essence. It's going to make it so that your mages actually benefit from this. Whenever they actually cast a Bone Spear, which is every 25% chance, it's going to make it so that they're going to do 15% increased damage just for free. And then I went Bone Spear down to Paranormal Bone Spear for the critical strike chance, because we have multiple ways of actually getting vulnerable. And as you can see, we do not take Hewed Flesh because we took the Reapers. 3 points into Spiked Armor because it's going to get 15% additional armor. 3 points into Skeletal Warrior Mastery. 1 point in Grain of Harvest. 3 into Fuel by Death for the 9% increased damage. 3 points in Amplify Damage. Decrepify all the way over to Abhorrent Decrepify for the cooldown reduction. 3 points in Skeletal Mage Mastery. As you can see here, I have the additional 6 points from those other pieces to bring me up to 9 points out. So it actually brings my mages up to 180% increased damage. This is huge. That's why I said to get it on those 3 pieces. And then Death's Approach is going to give us 12% movement speed. We're going to go Corpse Tendril all the way up to Plague Corpse Tendril. You only need to put 1 point in here. The other 3 is actually coming from my Ring of Sacrilegious Soul, so don't worry about the 4. That's just from a piece. 3 points into Necrotic Carapace. It's going to make you fortified, so it's going to increase your amount of survivability because we're not running the Blood Golem like a lot of other people do. You don't have that 30% damage reduction buffer that the Blood Golem provides. However, Blood Golem is kind of worthless outside of the damage reduction that he does provide. 1 point in Serration, 1 into Compound Fracture, 3 points into Avulsion, so that your skeletal mages, when they do cast your Bone Spear, are going to get a 30% increased critical strike damage to the vulnerable enemies, and they will basically be permanently vulnerable with this build. Get the entire Army of the Dead package, and everything except for 1 point into Bonded in Essence. So you're going to put 3 points in all of these, and then 2 points into Bonded in Essence. You want the entire package. We need the additional healing because we are using the Bone Mages. And then, of course, we're going to use Kalen's Edict because this is going to give your minions a huge chunk of attack speed. Onto the Paragon board. All right, so first up, we got normal board. We're going to go up and put Amplify in because it's going to boost blue and the yellow nodes. And this is going to give a huge chunk of free extra damage and free extra armor. Next up, we're going to go straight into the Cult Leader board, and we're going to put the Dead Razor glyph in here because if you're running a Cult Leader board, you need Dead Razor because it's going to boost all of the extra damage around. Now, I know that there's the talk right now that if you are running the Bone Spear Bone Mages, you don't need to run the Cult Leader board. However, they only cast Bone Spear 25% of the time. So if you don't run this board, you're nerfing 75% of their damage. You definitely want to run this because we're going to have the Bone board next. Anyways, actually the Bone board's up here. So of course, make sure you go over here, grab Skeletal Warrior damage, Summon damage, Skeletal Mage damage, grab Cult Leader itself, and then the Survivability package up here in this corner. Third board will be obviously Bone Graft, and we're going to make sure we put in the Control glyph here and get as much intelligence within the radius as possible because we're going to constantly be crowd controlling the enemies, which means we're going to be getting a humongous chunk of bonus damage for our minions. Go diagonal all the way up and grab Bone Graft. Make sure you're grabbing the critical strike nodes and the bone damage nodes along the way. Fourth board is actually going to be Flesh Eater because we're constantly consuming corpses with Raised Skeleton to actually get our priests up to buff our minions. So they're going to be, I wouldn't say 100% uptime on the 40% increased damage. However, it's probably about a good 60 to 70% uptime. It's quite often because your ring is casting it and you're casting it anyways as well. So you're definitely going to have this up quite often. We're going to throw in the Mage glyph here because it's going to increase your mage's damage by 198%. Massive damage. Make sure you grab the elite damage nodes along here, and we're going to go over and grab the 10 int node over here for the increased skeletal mage damage as well as a little bit of all res. And the final board is going to be Bloodbath, and obviously we're just coming over here for the glyph socket, and that's going to be Warrior. It's going to increase your warrior's damage by 154%. And also, since we are getting fortified from the necrotic carapace node. This will also give us damage while fortified, which will transfer over to our minions, increasing their damage as well. And that is the build. It's extremely fun. I have cleared all of the content in the game solo with it now. It took a little bit of tweaking here and there before I got it to where it was in a really fun spot, as well as being extremely strong. So I hope you enjoy. If you do, let me know in the comments down below. I'll be putting out a leveling build for season 4 pretty soon. I've been capturing some game footage for it. I actually have one character I leveled up to 100 already, and another one I restarted. They're both called Sludge Level or Level Sludge. This one I leveled all the way up to 100, and this one is actually halfway there. I've cleared the first capstone dungeon at 37 or 38. Extremely strong, no deaths. It's just been an absolute blast to level, and I will give step-by-step instructions for that. So make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on that leveling build, so you are prepared for season 4. And thank you for watching. Have a nice day.